All right, let's get things kicked off here. So, about 2 weeks ago, Blaire White, who I'm certain most people know who Blaire White is, the transgendered right-wing political commentator here on YouTube, was on a stream with a debate panel with, I can't remember the name. It was oh, what is the name of it? Um, Something censored, slightly offensive. That's what it is. That's the name of the channel. The YouTube channel. I'm assuming that that's the main YouTube channel that it originally appeared on. But she was on with Karlin Borisenko was there, John Doyle was there, the heck off commie guy. Everybody should know him. And then blatant white nationalist Lauren Witzke was also there. So I want to talk about this. And like I said, this happened roughly 2 weeks ago. A lot of people have commented on it, and there's a reason for that. But before I really dive in here, I do want to mention, just for anybody that's watching this live or that watches on the playback, there is going to be some very offensive language utilized towards members of the LGBTQ plus community in this video. So just a fair warning that if you are easily offended by harsh language towards this community, you can fast forward or mute or do what you feel you need to do for those parts. But Blaire White in this stream, on this debate panel, just let Lauren Witzke just straightforwardly trample over her. So let's, sorry, having a little bit of fun. Having a little bit of fun. Yeah, let's dive in here.
Dr. Carl here was the first one to celebrate me being
Harlan.
Quinn.
Harlan. Well, I celebrated that you were banned on
I
Twitter
will
because
say,
you repeatedly
can I
tweeted that
just
my
say,
husband should be deported, Lauren, and
he's
now
an
I'm
illegal
I'm
alien.
I
thrilled.
don't really know how much you know about me, but I'm probably the most vocal anti-children transitioning person on the internet. It's what I'm.
Right.
It's well, I let you
Right.
speak.
The best thing you can do for us is
I,
grow out your mustache and tell people not to live like you.
Just some quick context. That was sort of a preview that they did before this got posted. But we're gonna. And I just wanted to mention, I will probably not review the entire debate that happened here, just because. Let me turn my mic down a little bit. There we go. Let's get that down. Because I think it's almost like an hour long, something like that. No, yeah, it's about an hour long. Maybe I will, but probably not. There's some meat here that I want to dive into. So let's keep going, shall we?
There's been a lot of arguments on Twitter recently where people cannot decide what it means to be right wing or what the future of the party is. If you don't know why that's important, well, just look around you at the radical leftism, all the insanity in the culture, and a president who borrowed an election, and a country who wonders what is our future and who is going to save us from this absolute madness. Well, a lot of people seem to disagree, which is why I brought a panel of guests on to talk about what the future of the right wing looks.
I also wanted to mention, you're going to hear a small amount of feedback that is not on my end. That is the actual video. I don't know who's doing their producing, but they must not be very good at it. Maybe they didn't know about the problem. Hey, I'm a noob streamer myself, so anyway, let's continue here.
Looks like and how we win back our country. If we can bring them on the screen, I went ahead and I invited on a myriad of people. I have Karlin, he's called Karlin Borisenko.
Well done.
Awesome. Commentator. We also have Lauren Witzke. She ran for Congress in Delaware. We also have Blaire White, YouTuber as well, and John Doyle, YouTuber, and they're all here to answer these questions. So let's talk a little bit about this as we get into this. Starting with Lauren, how do you describe yourself politically?
Okay, so I am socially conservative. I've always been economically populist. Economic populism is the future of our party. However,
I just want you all to know, because I'm assuming that most people that are watching the stream have probably at least heard about this whole debacle that happened. Debacle, debacle, I hear it pronounced both ways. I don't really know. Tomato, tomato, it doesn't matter. the whole economic populism, that's really, when you hear that being used by right wingers, that's just it's essentially it's a proxy for I'm a white nationalist, and you'll see what I mean when you hear her talk as we continue with this.
For preserving social conservatism within the Republican Party is a real passion of mine. I'm very pro family, I'm very pro life. My whole motto is I just like to win and save babies. So that's what I do.
Awesome. Blaire, go ahead and tell us where you lean politically.
Yeah, every political quiz I've ever taken matches center right. So that's me. I don't have sort of the
By the way, recently, I think it was recent, within the last month or so, something like that, maybe a couple months, Blaire White did a video. I don't think it was live streamed or anything like that, but she did a video where she took the traditional political compass test that we're all familiar with. Somebody figured something out. They went through and they selected every single answer that she did exactly the same way. And this person discovered that she skipped over a question, or at least didn't show her answer to that question in the video that she had posted, and that was a question on abortion. And so the guy said that what he did is he just answered the way that a staunch conservative would. It's like, do you support abortion or something? And he did strongly disagree, which is a traditional conservative answer. And the results, and like I said, all the questions except that one, and he took a quite conservative stance on that one. All the questions were exactly the same way that Blaire answered them, and it came out center left. And in fact, you can see, if you go to that video on her channel, you'll see that there's a place where she cuts to the ending talking about her results, and you can see on her web browser that there's a search there for political compass tests on Google image results. So she found a slightly center left, or rather center right, picture on Google and used that. The results that she gave for that test come out center left, not center right.
popular story everyone loves of like, I'm a former liberal, I'm a lifelong Republican, always voted that way. And yeah, that's me. I'm definitely a little bit less socially conservative. And that's where I land.
John, go ahead.
It's a pretty clear copy paste between Lauren and myself, I think. Fiscally populist and socially conservative.
Carlin, are you different than them?
Yeah, I'm a little bit different in that, some people say I'm a former liberal. I'm actually a current liberal. I have never stopped being a liberal, even though I did leave the Democratic Party. I politically, on my political compass test, I tend to be right in the center, and I frankly just want common sense people to come up with common sense solutions.
Awesome. So as we get into this, I want to let you know something important. This is the first question we're going to jump into, which is, what is the future of the right wing, right? If we're going to win a war, if we're going to fight the left, we've got to figure out who's on our side. And there's a split.
Notice how he worded that. It's a war. They have to fight us. This is the kind of language that they use. Yeah, and I hope you guys realize this. They utilize charged language like this because the political right, and I'm not talking about like your, I'm not going to give anything away, but like people like Karolyn Borisenko, the top left here, people like her are not. I'm not including them in this, honestly, because they're not. They're very moderate right leaning. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about like anything that's to the right of that. So from about Rand Paul all the way to Donald Trump. The problem is they utilize this charged language of we've got to win these fights. This is a war. We got to fight the left. Is all a part of their fear mongering. They're trying to stir up fear in their base, because what happens when you get people afraid of something? They start to resent it. And what happens when you start to resent people? You begin to grow insensitive to their grievances. You begin to view them as less than human. So just listen very carefully to the language, especially that Lauren and John Doyle here, bottom right, use. Listen very carefully to the language that they use in this video.
Of trying to figure out if the future of the right is a conservative, moral Christian party that has a strong nationalist background, or if it's this big tent party full of liberals, libertarians, disaffected left, etc. Before we jump into that, I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor for today, guys. The world is getting crazy, and I'm telling you, it is not getting easy out there. Not only do you need to have defensive equipment, provide the best quality lifestyle, really great. Check.
I don't really
Take back the country from the radical left, and we seek to make it a stronger place.
Just letting everybody know I did that because, no, sorry, not going to have right-wingers advertise their shit on my channel. Get out of here with that. Get out of here with that.
How are we going to do that? Is it A, by building a stronger, conservative, Christian moral party, or is it B, building a big tent party of libertarians, the disaffected left, conservatives, etc.? Like with the questions, we'll try to go in the same order. We'll start with Lauren.
Yeah, so I'm really confused why this is a discussion about the future of the right when we have a liberal, actually this is a Democrat, with one good opinion. We also have a transgender on here. I don't really think we should be giving a platform to this kind of degeneracy, which is a gateway drug to pedophilia. I absolutely disagree. We were.
There it is. Hot take. LGBTQ-ism. Because I've heard a lot of conservatives call it LGBTQ-ism because it's like, oh, well, I'm trying to be inclusive. It's stupid. It leads to pedophilia. Like, she's coming out hot. Like, this woman is, she's just, I don't know, she looks like, what is up with her hair, by the way? She looks like she just glued a fucking mop to the top of her head. Anyway, let's listen to her bullshit, shall we?
We're the party of traditional marriage. We were the party that opposed gay marriage. We've always been that party. We've always been the party of family. We won handedly in 2016 without the LGBTQ vote.
The party of families is breaking apart families at the southern border such that they can't be reunited, or at least it would be very, very difficult to reunite that. Just remember that the party of families is breaking apart families, and we all know why, because they're brown.
We started losing when we started compromising. So I'm really curious why people who are libertarians, you have a party of freaks who love the free market that you can join, but don't come into our party and try to influence it, because that is how we are losing. And in case you haven't noticed, we are losing. They are now advocating for chemical castrations for children. We're spotlighting transgenderism at CPAC. And I am a traditional Christian.
No, they're not. Maybe a bunch of like hyper radical idiots that don't understand anything about gender theory are advocating for that, but generally speaking, people are not advocating for chemical castration. Oh man, like I said, just listen to what especially like I said, Lauren and John, listen to what they say and how they say it, and you will pick up on that fear mongering and hate mongering that is traditional of modern American conservatism.
Christian conservative. I believe in family. I believe that family is the foundation of everything that this country was founded on. And no, I do not believe that we should be compromising our values and spotlighting a lifestyle that is a gateway drug to pedophilia every single time. And you cannot deny it isn't, because it's here.
Blaire, would you respond?
I think that there's a difference between, you spoke sort of to gender ideology, which is definitely rampant on college campuses, definitely taking over culture. I think that's different than just people who, as individuals, may technically be gay, lesbian, bisexual, any of the above. And I think that it's possible to fight against gender ideology while holding true that there are going to be people that are just different in life. I definitely am not here to speak to the future of social conservatism, because that's just not my lane. But as far as the party, I think that a big tent is most likely the future. I think that knowing my generation and a lot of people my age, which is mid 20s and Gen Z a little younger, I think that they voted for Trump the first and second time, or just the second time, because Trump kind of ushered the party into an era of a little more secularism. I don't think he was overtly religious. I think to an extent he was a little performative with religion and with prayer and things like that. And I think that attracted a lot of new voters. And I'm not sure that, going full force religious social.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Snake, was right in the live chat. Said gateway drug to pedophilia. You mean the Christian churches? This is something that I've actually that's a really good point. Notice how all these Christian conservatives rail against the LGBTQ community because it leads to pedophilia and all this, but never mention the Catholic Church, the Church of Latter Day Saints, the Mormon Church, Jehovah's Witnesses. All of these, not that I mean, a lot of fundamentalists wouldn't consider any of those Christian to begin with, but I mean, just straightforwardly, they are. They never talk about the problems in their own communities, especially the religious communities that demonstrably have these problems. The hypocrisy of modern American conservatism is, if we could harness it as an energy source, it would probably directly rival the sun in its power output, just straightforwardly.
Conservatism is really the future.
John, can you respond?
Yeah, I think that the concept of a big tent movement is basically this sort of intra-party democracy that prevents us ultimately from being effective at actually wielding power. And this could date back even to what's referred to as the Reagan Coalition, where we tried to unite social conservatives with libertarians, with fiscal conservatives, and then we created something which ultimately didn't last in effect, where we're now on the back foot with things such as gender identity. And even now we're trying it, with pandering to different minority groups, different interest groups, which will never give us more than 8% of the vote, for example. So I think that to actually try something different would be to legitimately establish a strong party with the values that we're nominally in support of and actually wielding the power effectively when we are given the chance, instead of getting into power and then doing nothing and trying to pander to these groups thinking that we're going to own the libs and take their voting base away from them.
Yeah, Carlin, I'm interested to hear your perspective because obviously this would be a question that would pertain to you directly since you admit that you're a liberal and you just registered as a Republican. I mean, give us your thoughts.
Good. I did. Well, the fact of the matter is that
Well, the first thing is just a little facetiousness. She's going to say the fact of the matter frequently in this, but I want to specify. Carlin would be more of a classical liberal, which can extend from the moderate right to the moderate left. But anything further to the right or further to the left of that would either be considered conservatism or some form of progressivism. So when she says that she's a liberal, and this is, I'm assuming that this is obvious, she's referring to that in a more classical sense.
MAGA is not a religious movement. MAGA is a political movement. And in order to win elections, you have to win votes. The fact of the matter is that Donald Trump has never cared about gay marriage. It was never something that he was against. Dude hung out at Studio 54. Why would he care? And so I'm on the side of winning too, Lauren. I'm on the side of winning elections. The fact of the matter is that Donald Trump created a Big Tent strategy that brought 10 million more people to him in 2020 than he did in 2016. And if we go back and look at the history of the Republican Party and when they lost the culture war the first time, Ronald Reagan offered a big tent. He said, everyone is welcome in this big tent. He won 2 terms. George H.W. Bush followed him. The Republicans were in control for 12 years until what happened? The moral majorities tried to swoop right in and started legislating Christianity. And that is when they lost the culture war. That is when they started losing voters, when they started trying to legislate their religion the first time around.
I just want to say that everything that Carlin just said is actually based as fuck. Like it's actually true. Um, and I guess I might as well just give this away now, not that it's going to ruin anything, but Karolyn Borisenko, when you're agreeing with her on pretty much everything that she says, where she's the most sensible individual on a panel, that speaks to how bad the other interlocutors on that panel actually are. But everything she just said is actually pretty on point.
Around. The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of a religion or they're prohibiting the free exercise of thereof. So it protects your right to practice your religion as much as it protects my right to practice mine. This is not a question of religion. If you want to do whatever you want to do in church, that's fine. Go talk to your church elders, go talk to your deacons, exclude anyone you want from your church. But the fact of the matter is that I would really like if the Democrats didn't control everything. And in order for that to happen, we need to win. And that means building the broadest possible coalition of voters that we can. And that's what I think we should do.
Lauren, that's pretty much opposite of what you brought up and what you were saying. Could you please respond to that?
Yeah, so, Donald Trump, he did do things that made the church have to make excuses for him. His Globo Homo initiative ended up losing him a significant amount of the Christian vote. And we are the base of this party. We make up a huge portion of this party, a way bigger.
My button stopped working for pausing the video, which pisses me off. Anyway, Globo Homo? What's that even supposed to mean? Holy shit, this is insane. Sometimes the shit that some of these right-wingers come up with really is just, it's just asinine. And like I said, you can tell their language is charged in such a way to generate fear. They're trying to make you afraid. And that, in my opinion, is a problem. It's a major problem, in my opinion.
Bigger portion than the libertarian sector of the party, no matter how much they want to tell you. So him making those compromises is probably a big part of why we lost the House in 2018. In 2017, we had the House, the executive branch, and the Senate, and we still failed on conservative issues. They refused to stand up for life. They still passed a budget that actually made us forced Christian taxpayers to fund Planned Parenthood. So every vote lost on social conservatism is, we are significantly more. We are the party that was established in traditional marriage. So I'm curious when the liberals and the transgenders decided that it was.
Wait, hold on. What is meant by traditional marriage? I mean, obviously, I know how she's using the term, but what does the term really mean? Does it actually have a legitimized meaning? I don't think it does. Marriage is marriage. This traditional marriage is just it's you see, they don't just use charged language to garner fear. They use language that's very divisive, that tries to draw distinctions and then point to how their distinctions, the ones that they utilize, are somehow correct. That's the way it should actually be worded. That's what it really means. I want you to think about why they do that.
Their duty to come and infiltrate our party to make it successful, because we were doing just fine. We started actually losing votes when we started pandering. We lost a significant amount of our base, enough to make an effect and make a dent into the electorate by compromising our values. The only way forward is to stay true to our values that we've always been and established on, and win with them. It's the weakness. People value strength over anything else. And when we started showing weakness and compromise, that's when we started.
The language that she just used there, what she just stated, is it, hey, look, maybe I'm the only one, but that came off as quite fascistic. That we care about strength. People adore strength. It's when you're weak. It's when you try to engage in diplomacy and try to find compromise so that we can move forward and try to ensure that as many people as possible can be happy and have opportunities. No, people don't like that's being weak. We need strength. It's very, very fascistic language there. Very fascistic language.
Losing. And I don't think that is something that we should continue. I think that we should remain the party of Jesus Christ, the party of life, the party that celebrates family and makes it as easy as possible for Americans to get married and have children. Why would I celebrate a lifestyle that people can't reproduce? You can't reproduce. You just can't. So having families, that is the future of the party. We started losing when we started compromising. Big Tent
Okay.
is a lie.
Lauren,
It
let me
is.
jump in there real fast and give Blaire a chance to respond to that.
Sure.
I think the concept of more people infiltrating a party isn't necessarily what has happened. I think that the modern left has shown its hand to such an extent that people are just being extremely turned off by it. Um, again, being a lifelong Republican voter, I've never had a moment where I entered the party and then had plans to change it from within. I think that every American has a right to vote in any direction that they choose. And I think, especially over the next 4 years of the Biden presidency, there's probably going to be a lot more people who are uh, red pilled, I guess is going to be the term, and wanting to vote, in the opposite direction of how things ended up in November. And I also would say, Trump got the most votes of any sitting president in history. I think that's true, right? That's right. And I think there's a reason for that. I think what I spoke to earlier was the push towards more secularism. And I think that while social conservatives and religious conservatives still voted Trump because it was the right direction, and like you said, they did make a lot of excuses and compromises on their beliefs, I think Trump really and Trumpism is the future of the party and the future of success. I'm also one of those people that, I don't know, this might have to be edited out for YouTube, but I'm not completely convinced that the election was won by Biden by completely legitimate
It was
means.
borrowed.
So
We can say it was
I
borrowed.
think, what?
We can say it was borrowed.
Yep, you heard it here first, folks. The election was stolen, totally. Biden didn't win it fair and square at all. Never mind the God knows how many dozens, if not hundreds, of lawsuits that the Trump administration brought, and they lost like 99.999% of them. No, that doesn't have anything to do with it. No. We can ignore that. Never mind the fact that the Supreme Court shot down like two of their suits. No, we can ignore all that. Donald Trump totally won. They were gonna make a president on what was that, March 4th or March 6th, but we missed that date. We're shooting for June 1st now. Put that on your calendars, folks. June 1st, Trump's coming back in. Oh yeah.
You can't say
Oh, yeah.
stolen, but you can say the
Okay.
election was borrowed.
And so even though, yeah, Biden won, I still think Trump is the future of the right in general. So
Okay, John, why don't you jump in there?
I think that's correct in that Trump is the future of the Republican Party. But what's interesting about that is that during his first campaign and even his second campaign, he really didn't touch on LGBT issues that much. I mean, he held up the flag, I think, at a few events at the advice probably of people like Jared Kushner. But if you look at where his voters actually sit on the political spectrum, they're
And this was a point that Vosh made when he was reviewing this. Yeah. Let's blame Jared Kushner. Let's blame the guy with either Jewish or Semitic origins for the global homo movement. Yeah. Jesus Christ! Like I said, pay attention to what these guys say very closely, because Lauren and John here, who are ironically enough actually placed on the right side of this panel, just listen to their language. Listen to how they say things very, very closely.
not the right-wing libertarians that a lot of big donors would like the party to be. They're actually basically authoritarian in the center. And so if you look at where they poll on issues such as like gay marriage versus traditional marriage, or like transgender bathroom issues, like whatever, they're all like very, I guess you'd say, authoritative and conservative in that, and that they're in support of traditional and socially conservative policies. And so that's where the momentum in the party is. And so if you're going to come over and vote for Republicans because you agree with their positions on foreign policy or fiscal policy or what have you, that's all in fine. But what we can't do is start to compromise and say that, like, you can come over here and we're actually going to pander to you as well and give you positions at CPAC. And I think it's interesting because a lot of people that are trying to join the Republican Party or the conservative movement and then bring to light more of these like LGBT issues are basically showing their hand in that they're not actually conservative. And I'm not speaking about you guys specifically, just like the rhetoric that I deal with online, because fundamentally the idea of like LGBT issues is about the enshrinement of total equality, which is fundamentally not a conservative idea. Conservatives believe in hierarchy.
Yep, equality. It's not a conservative thing, but I think we all knew that already, didn't we? Very, very revealing what he just said. Yeah, conservatives? No, fuck no. We don't want equality. Fuck equality. Fuck all that. Everybody gets the same opportunity. No, we favor hierarchy and strength. That's what we're all about. That's that fascistic language.
hierarchy and natural law, and the idea that we can have total equality across the board for different types of relationships or different types of marriages, quote unquote, is just fundamentally not a conservative idea. And so if we want to have success in the future as a party, we have to actually like maintain a strong footing on what it actually means to be conservative, which we haven't done in the last 70 years, I'd say.
Yeah, so I want to kind of tweak this a little bit to you, Carlin. As that question that he said, right, is like this is the question a lot of people ask on the traditional right, is that the right has been defined as being a conservative party, and that has been traditionally what it has been. Now, you say that you identify as a liberal, but you are a Republican. I would say that's more of a new development in the party. I'd say that it is, related to Trumpism, to MAGA, or as Lauren calls it, the Globo Homo movement, which I almost spit out my coffee when she said that. I find all this stuff.
If it hasn't been made obvious already that this guy right here, like this guy is on the side of these two here. He is on the same side as the fascists on this, because let's be honest here, you can already tell from the language that Lauren and John have used here, they're fascists. They don't like equality, they don't like diplomacy, they don't like compromise, they want authority, they want power, they want hierarchy. That's what it is. John even said natural law. They're fascists. It's certainly white nationalists. Maybe there could be a debate on whether they're fascists, but I would argue that given the rhetoric that they've used, they're at least very, very close to fascism. This guy, yeah, the host here, he agrees with them. He's on their side.
Quite hilarious sometimes. But with that being said, if we're going to take the big tent party approach, right, and we're going to bring in all of these people that are of different viewpoints like yourself, what is this conservative party conserving, and how is it any different than, let's just say, being a liberal party from 10 years ago?
Well, right now it's not conserving anything because they don't have any power because they lost elections. But I do want to speak to John's point specifically in that he used the magic word, which is pandering. The left panders to the LGBT movement. Trump did advocate for LGBT policies. He did so by appointing the first openly gay member of the cabinet, which the left likes to.
Wait, hold on. Wait, no, wait. The guy who banned transgendered people from serving in the military supports the LGBTQ movement? What are are you serious? Oh, but he put an openly gay person in his cabinet. Oh, okay. He banned transgenders from serving in the military, and his Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, rolled back, as well as just the Trump administration broadly, rolled back numerous protections for the LGBTQ community. But you're going to sit here and tell us that Trump and or his administration, they supported the very movement that they actively rolled back protections for? Get the fuck out of here. Oh, and by the way, that's what you call pandering. The left doesn't pander to the LGBTQ movement. I would argue that like the neoliberal corporatists in the Democratic Party do, but the left, progressives, don't pander. They don't pander at all. Pandering is what Carlin is doing right now, which is where she's trying to say, oh, well, Trump supported the LGBTQ movement. He promoted or appointed somebody in his cabinet that was gay. That's pandering. She's literally trying to pander to the LGBTQ movement and say, hey, look, just ignore what Lauren and John are saying. We're not all bad. We support you guys. She's literally doing the thing that she's criticizing the left for doing. This is hilarious. This is absolutely hilarious.
Forget about all the time. He did support this community. He just didn't do it in a way that was pandering. But again, like I'm a liberal because I believe in individual liberty, individual freedom. I'm very concerned with preserving specifically our First Amendment values and all of the amendments specifically. But the First Amendment's really my jam, which again, does not allow for the state to legislate based on one religion's specific values. But if we want to talk about religion, we can talk about a verse from the Bible, which is 1 Timothy 2, verses 1 through 2, which says, I urge then, first of all, the petitions, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgivings be made for all people, for kings and for those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. And I bring that up because that is the only place in the New Testament that really touches on the relationship of Christians to government. And what does it say? It says they should pray for the people in leadership so that they may live peaceful and quiet lives in godliness and holiness. So what does that mean? It means that we should be working on electing a government that allows people to practice whatever religion they want and to live peaceful and quiet lives in godliness and holiness. And the only way that we can do that is by creating a broad coalition of voters who win elections. That's what we should be talking about first and foremost, is how we win elections.
Before we go, I'm gonna go to John because John was.
I'm obviously not a Christian, as everybody that's watching me on my channel is probably well aware of. But I do think that what Carlin said there wasn't really that bad. She quoted directly from the Bible to point out that these two pretty much fascist, Christo-fascist white nationalists over here, Lauren and John, they preach all this Christianity but don't even know what the Bible says. I think it's pretty obvious, whether you're a Christian or not, that those two, Lauren and John, don't know anything about what Jesus taught if you just listen to what they've been saying over the last roughly 20 minutes we've been watching this video.
John was sort of laughing during that, and so why are you laughing?
I was humored by the biblical substantiation for having more gay people in government. I just thought that was kind of funny. But no, I don't think that, like, even you push back on what I had said about the pandering with, well, Trump appointed these people and he appointed these people, so he was actually, like, serving the interests of the community. It's interesting because, as you noted, the left will still ignore that because they control the narratives and they control the media. And so really, no matter what Trump does to pander to that, however many percent of the, 3% of the voting demographic isn't actually.
Yeah, you heard it here, folks. The left controls the media, the same media that rails against regulations on corporations and donations by those corporations and their executives and shareholders into government, the same media that's railed against tuition-free higher education, universal health care, raising the minimum wage. It's that, like, all these things, the left support? Yeah, but they control the media because they want the media to be saying things that they don't support, because that's how it works, right? Well, I mean, that's how it works in John Doyle's mind.
Actually going to serve interests. And I just don't think that the reason Trump didn't win in 2020, assuming the election was totally legitimate, was because he didn't serve the interests of the LGBT community enough. I mean, Trump won in 2016 because of immigration, because of free trade, and because of foreign policy. It wasn't at all because of social issues as it pertains to, like, the.
Literally none of that was true. Trump won in 2016 for no other reason than that the Electoral College handed him his victory, because we utilize an antiquated system, an antiquated electoral system that's failed us 5 times in the past. The most recent one was with Donald Trump. I mean, he won, quote unquote, yes, because he ended up in office, but he lost a popular vote by 3 million votes. So, did he really win?
The interests of gays and transgenders or what have you. And then as far as the biblical substantiation for it, I mean, it's outlined obviously, and not only in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament, like, very clearly, that sexual immorality, which under the umbrella would be homosexuality, is wrong. But you seem to be alluding to this idea of, like, the individual and their private home and things like that when you talk about, people living in a free society to do what they want and not, causing any problems. But what's interesting about that is that was the argument that during the movements in the 1960s and 70s, including the sexual revolution, that allowed a lot of this stuff to have a seat at the table, which ultimately would use
I don't know if you guys can hear or see me, but I have the video paused because my bitrate just dropped like mad, so I don't think it's worth it to play the video if you guys probably aren't going to be able to hear it. I'm just waiting for the bitrate to come back up a little bit before I play it again. There we go.
Usurp power away from traditional Americans and traditional social conservatives. And I just think that that's basically a myth, because there's really no such thing as a private individual in the privacy of their own home, because you are one person. And so any actions that you take in your house are ultimately going to reflect you and how you conduct yourself in the real world. And then it's also kind of misleading because people don't want to be confided in the privacy of their own home or what have you, because that almost presupposes that it's something to be ashamed of. And people don't like that. And so what happens is then they start taking to the streets and they start having parades and they start to infiltrate education. They start to infiltrate institutions such as the American Psychiatry Association. And then what was it, 2015, June of 2015, the Supreme Court decided that 5 minutes ago, marriage can be between two men. And now we're here on the back foot with issues like, hey, maybe kids shouldn't be taking prenatal hormones. Or
Can we jump?
Prenatal hormones? Like, that's, what the fuck does that even mean? Prenatal hormones? I don't even, that's not a thing, my dude. What does that even mean? See, these people are so fucking uneducated. Sad, absolutely sad. I'm sorry, that makes me laugh. Prenatal hormones. Prenatal hormones. That is just absolutely... By the way, for those who don't know, prenatal just means not born yet, like still in the womb. So the whole concept of prenatal hormones just makes no sense. And I apologize. Every 3 minutes, I've been dropping frames left. The rate is not doing well. I have no idea what the issue is. Hopefully it clears up.
Elijah, I want to jump in there because
Sure.
John just fundamentally misrepresented something I said, because I specifically chose 1 Timothy 2 verse 1 and 2 because it has nothing to do with homosexuality. That's why I specifically chose that passage. It has to do with the relationships Christians have with their government. Now, if we want to talk about how the Bible deals with homosexuality, what I would like to focus on is the fact.
Did it figure itself out? Are we going to smooth out? You gotta love having fiber optic internet that can't support... Yeah, I have no idea what the issue was. I really don't. Yeah, exactly. Fiber optics shouldn't be doing... I didn't drop any frames for the first 42 minutes of this video, 40 minutes of this video, and over the last, like, 5-ish minutes, I've dropped thousands of frames. That is insane. That has never happened to me before. That is really, really weird. But I do know that some people have been having issues with OBS and the dropped frame rate. I don't know what it is. My internet connection is coming in, says it's strong. I don't know what the issue is.
That there are multiple different arguments for different interpretations of the Bible. I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Bible scholar, but I do know that there are multiple different interpretations for that. And instead of getting into the nitty gritty about what it says in that area, I want to focus on the fact that, again, this is an argument for the First Amendment, for religion to not be the dictator of a political movement. If you want to talk about these issues in your church, do talk about them in your church. If you want to exclude people from your church, fine. If you want to exclude gays from getting married in your church, that is a conversation between you and your church elders. This
I
is
don't
a
think anyone's
conversation
arguing from
about
the point
a
of religion.
political movement.
I think that all the arguments against the acceptance of homosexuality within the right are completely secular. It may just so happen to appeal to the base of that movement as Christians, but I think that Lauren and I could recite several arguments that are maybe even more compelling from a completely secular perspective.
Let me
And I
jump in
hope
there
you'll
with-
do it in church.
Let me jump in
And
there.
I'd be really curious to hear secular arguments against being gay, because literally they're never given. Like I've never in my life, maybe I'm the only one, but I have never in my life heard a non-religious argument against being gay or being a part of the LGBTQ community as being a negative. Not once.
I think it's really
Yeah.
funny that she's quoting scripture as a liberal, thinking that she can use it against us as Christians. It's like, oh, it doesn't apply to me, but maybe it'll work on you. And guess what? It doesn't work. Playing on our Christian compassion and making us be tolerant and acceptive of all this diversity, you know what that's left us with? Transgender pedophiles on Twitter saying that your daughter asked for it. Your little girl isn't actually a princess. She asked for it when I abuse her. That is where we're at. So you're throwing script.
Wait, what the fuck is Lauren talking about right now? Transgender pedophiles on YouTube? I'm pretty sure she's just pulling this shit straight out of her ass. This is... Oh my god.
Scripture at me as a liberal is not going to work. You cannot play the Christian compassion card on us anymore. We are taking a stand for social conservatism because it matters. Social issues matter. And using God's word and manipulating it to try to get Christians to agree with you is absolutely subversive. And that's what we're struggling with in our party is subverters. How many kids saw Blaire White, giving one of her videos? I know Trump is a cash cow. I know people love to talk about him to get their popularity, but how many children saw her and looked at her and said, you know what, she looks really good. I could do that too, and started transitioning. This is about the children. They are coming for our kids, and we are at a point now where we're going to have to take a stand. Will the party go the way of the LGBTQ? Will the party, we already have a transgender man, woman, I don't know, in California running the Federation for Republican Women. Are we going to let this stand, or are we going to choose to stay with the nuclear family and support the nuclear family? Because from what I've seen from these LGBTQ activists, such as Richard Renault, who's an absolute pervert, he refuses to stand up for transgenders in the military, against transgenders in the military. He refuses to stand and make a public statement that, hey, men shouldn't be in women's bathrooms. That's because they're bought, sold, and paid for by these LGBT donors who have seen an opportunity. Trump was a cash cow. He was. If you talk about him and if you are, had a different look or whatever, people would throw themselves at you because it's like, oh, look how.
The Trump being a cash cow thing is actually entirely correct. That's why the Democratic Party honestly didn't give a shit with whether they won the presidential election, and neither did the media. The media didn't give a shit who won, because the Democratic Party would just continue to use Trump as this boogeyman of the right wing and say, oh, look, oh, Trump bad, vote for us. And the media would just continue to plaster all the dumb shit he says and does. It's for the view rates, for money. So, I mean, she's got a point there. I mean, Donald Trump definitely was a cash cow.
Inclusive we are, but we're sacrificing everything. And when it comes down to it, I choose preserving the life of little children who are 15% of them are growing up identifying as LGBTQ. And transgender, uh, and we should not be giving a spotlight to or a platform to people who operate in a lifestyle where 40% of them end up attempting suicide, eventually. 1 in 4 children growing up struggling with LGBTQI gender dysphoria end up with depression, drug abuse. I think it's
Yeah.
80.
Yeah, Lauren, the reason for that isn't because they're transgender or that they suffer from gender dysphoria. It's because of fucks like you who consistently tell them how wrong and bad it is and who consistently attack them and delegitimize their existence, their identity, dehumanize them, and actively seek to suppress them in our society. That's what causes it. It's people like you. If you want to stop all this depression and suicide amongst these people, then maybe if you learned to accept them as people and treat them like a human being, that might happen. But you, in the language that you have been using in this entire fucking panel, is the reason these people feel this way. It has nothing to do with, well, it's like as if it's intrinsic to being transgender. It's not. It's because idiot, dumbass conservatives like you consistently dehumanize and delegitimize these people in their existence.
80% of men have a higher risk of HIV. Why would I support that lifestyle? Why would I
Lauren, real
even make
fast,
excuses for
I
that
want to
lifestyle
give
or
Blaire
try to
I
use
want to give
biblical
Blaire a chance to
scripture
respond
enable
to
it?
your statements real fast because I know Blaire has a hard out. We haven't heard from Blaire. Just on the statement of Lauren said, Lauren is talking about the subversion in the party, the idea that your choice
Well,
that you're transitioning,
before I just want to
influences young
specifically
people.
address what Lauren said about children maybe watching my YouTube videos and thinking that they can be like me or transition or whatever. I don't really know how much you know about me, but
Just listen. And by the way, I apologize for that, whatever the fuck that was that happened like 5 minutes ago. Things seem to be running much more smoothly now. I see some of our viewers have come back. Yeah, I probably wouldn't want to watch a stream that was really, really leggy either. I have no clue why that happened. I have absolutely no clue why that happened. Anyway, listen very carefully to what Blaire is saying here. Listen very, very carefully to it.
I'm probably the most vocal anti-children transitioning person on the internet. It's what I'm.
Right.
It's well. I let you speak.
The best thing you can do for us is
I-
grow out your mustache and tell people not to live like you. That is the best thing that you can do to help us because you are
Christ
not
love,
helping.
Christ love, wafting off Lauren, Christ love.
Go at it, guys.
And that's the tea. That's the main thing in this video that most people have probably seen. That, I mean, she's sitting here and in one breath is talking about how, well, transgender people, they suffer from, people that have gender dysphoria, they suffer from, depression and anxiety, and then they go and they commit suicide. And then in the next breath, the very next breath, literally says to a transgender woman, well, if you would just grow out your mustache and tell people not to live like you, the world would be a better place. But then you wonder the problems that you're pointing to. This is what I'm talking about. It's absolutely insane. It's absolutely, and notice how Blaire responds to it, or rather, lack thereof.
I think actually to
Okay.
close on the biblical point,
I
like, the
didn't-
first thing I
didn't
did
get
want to
to
say
finish
is the
my point.
vindication
I
of
would
Lauren's
love to finish
point
my
comes
point.
very clearly in the fact that we have a liberal on here who is personally a liberal and ideologically a liberal, though feels as though she can manifest that by voting for Republicans. And so I think that really speaks to how far our party has.
Okay, my frame rate is dropping really bad again, or my off camera, but stick with me. I'm just gonna move a little bit closer to my router. So give me about 30-ish seconds here. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back. I'm closer to my, a little closer to the router. We shouldn't have these problems. I have no idea how everything goes good for 40 fucking minutes and then consistently goes to shit. But technology, you gotta love it. Gotta love how it just runs so smoothly. Anyway, as I was saying, what was I saying? I don't even remember because I keep having to deal with these stupid fucking streaming problems. Let's continue.
Has deviated in the last 50 years to where now there are people who are personally liberal who feel as though their views can be reflected by voting for Republicans. And to close on the biblical topic, there's this misconception that like Jesus just said that we should be like vaguely nice to each other.
I remembered what I was going to say. Notice how, after what Lauren just said about Blaire to her face, she said nothing. She said absolutely nothing. That scene was the main reason that I wanted to touch on this video. I did tag Blaire White when I posted that I was doing this live stream on both Twitter and on Facebook. Now, I've got like 330 subscribers or something like that. I don't have a lot at all. But so it's not like she's ever going to even come to my channel. But if by some sort of miracle she happens to watch this, I just have one question. Why? Why would you let somebody literally delegitimize your identity and dehumanize you and say nothing? What do you gain out of this? Why would you not stand up for yourself? I mean, I'm just at a loss of words, honestly. I don't understand how I would never let somebody speak to me like that in any manner. But my idea as to why she said nothing, and I think that most people would probably agree, especially those that know Blaire White, is that Blaire White, honestly, is just a grifter. I mean, she's grifting, and she's in her grift on this panel. She knows the demographic to which she's appealing, and she knows that if she defends herself here, she will be legitimizing being transgender, and that will not allow her to appeal to the demographic that she's trying to appeal to, which is conservatives. I mean, that's who she's trying to appeal to. The thing is, the kind of rhetoric that Blaire engages in, what the demographic that she's targeting with what she says, leads to people like Lauren and like John. So she's suffering the result of, she is now, and I know some people have said they don't. I do kind of feel sorry for her here, but I do think it is worth mentioning. She is laying in her bed the way that she made it. What just happened to her, albeit extremely impermissible and absolutely disgusting, is the result of the rhetoric that she's been pushing. She's experiencing what happens when you push people to the right. This is the mentality they get. Just because she's transgender doesn't mean anything. People that get pushed to the right are going to generally adopt anti-LGBTQ views, straightforwardly. And let's be honest here, Blaire White is generally followed by probably, well, a lot of leftists that want to follow her for her takes, but then a lot of people who are probably, very much probably young. Like, so most of the people that follow her are people who are not predisposed to really becoming a conservative to begin with. Those that are not going to consider Blaire to be a part of the movement. But she wants to be. That's why she won't defend herself. Because like I said earlier, the minute she says, wait, you can't talk to me like that, she's now legitimizing who she is. She's legitimizing her identity, which is in turn legitimizing transgenderism, which is a no-no in conservative circles. That is why she did not defend herself.
As far as judgment goes, we are called as Christians not to judge people individually. Like, we cannot look at you and make a moral declaration like you are good or you are bad. That's not our position. However, we are called quite explicitly to judge the actions of people so as to maintain a moral and civilized society. And so we need to keep that social pressure on people, like you actually can't behave in this way or that way. And that's how we maintain a civilized and virtuous society. And we are called throughout the Bible to do that quite explicitly.
Okay, Blaire, can you please
All
respond
right,
to
well,
all
I
of that?
never
'Cause this is
finished my
crazy.
point, so I would just like to say, as I said earlier, whether anyone on this panel likes it or wants to acknowledge it, there's a really huge chunk of LGBT people who are very much against ideas like children transitioning, like trans women in biological women's sports, and all of the ideas that are, hot talking points, but they're very real at the same time. So I don't think many kids would look at my YouTube videos and want to do anything like me, because I explicitly have been very known for saying that it's not a glamorous lifestyle, that it's difficult, and that children shouldn't be out.
Yes, I, Blaire White, a transgender woman, make videos delegitimizing my own identity. And again, that goes back to what I said. It's all a part of a grift. She wants so desperately to be a part of the right wing that she's willing to delegitimize her own fucking identity in order to do that. I mean, like I said at the beginning when the stream started, that she's not actually center right. She's center left. I mean, she covered that up for obvious reasons because she's scripting, but she's not a center right person. She's center left. And the thing is, I think she knows it. She recognizes that she's really at well, what I would consider at worst, but just at best, she's maybe a very, very moderate, like not even, you really wouldn't even call her a conservative. At best, she's a centrist. She's somebody who just kind of is in the center, can agree with people on both sides, but when you consider the political compass test that she took and you actually answer it the way that she did and don't go pull a picture off Google Images, she comes out as center left. She can't reveal that because it's a grift.
Allowed to transition, because it can often be a mistake that really damages their life. So I don't know, I just felt like that was a false premise. And again, I would like to agree with Carlin
It
on the sense.
wasn't a false premise. Like I said, if you want to help us, tell people not to live like you.
That people would watch my videos and come to that conclusion when I say not to, and I advocate against it. I think that there are a lot of trans people online that you.
Jesus fucking Christ, Blaire, stand up for yourself. For God's sake, you're gonna let this white nationalist, fascist, dumb, whatever the fuck she is, just completely steamroll you into nothingness. I don't know. I couldn't have such a low amount of self-respect to engage in this. And it might sound mean, but I don't think Blaire has a high amount of self-respect. And it has nothing to do with, oh, well, she's transgender, so she doesn't respect her. That has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that she's scripting. She can't have self-respect. That's a part of it. Not having the respect for yourself and for who you are to stand up and say, hey, look, no, this is wrong. Don't sit here and say this and that and that and this. And her standing up and defending herself. Not doing that is a part of her entire shtick. So all she's going to do is say, oh, well, you say that I could help the movement if I just, told people not to live like you, but you have to understand I do. It's so hard being me. I tell people not to live like me because, my lifestyle is so degenerate. I'm actually telling people the things that you want me to. Please let me in the movement. Please let me be one of you guys. It's so fucking sad.
Could argue maybe someone looks at their videos, children, and wants to do a certain thing, but I'm very much against it. If anything, people who support children transitioning or kids who want to transition hate me. So I also would like to say,
it's normal.
I do agree
That's not nothing.
I do agree with Carlin in the sense that if you guys do want to wield power and enact the socially conservative changes that you want, you do have to win elections. And telling people that they don't have a place to vote in your direction or that they don't have a place in your party isn't the way to win elections. So I guess if the topic is the future of the right, I think the future of the right's already.
I forgot I don't have my actual mouse here. I gotta run back upstairs and grab it, but I am gonna play the video so that you guys can listen to what's being said.
Settled. It's Trump, and that's not an ideology that tells people they're not allowed to come over. If anything, it's an ideology that welcomes people to come over. So
Okay,
it's
so
kind of
before
already
we jump
over, actually.
before we jump any further, I want to let you guys know something. It's very important. As you can see, a lot of people in this country disagree right now. We cannot seem to come to common ground on a lot of things, which is why people see the instability in the stock market. We had things like the power grid fail here in Texas, which is why I want to tell you about My Patriot Supply, which you can find at preparewithelijah.com. You know, right now, no matter what you think, bad things can happen. We lost power at my house. The grocery stores got taken for all their food, which is why I really want my followers to know that more than your politics, please take your safety in regard, and please get a personal storage of food that lasts up to many, many years. I think up to 25 years. Absolutely crazy. If you're not well stocked with emergency food and clean water, you need to get started right away. And the company that I personally recommend is My Patriot Supply, because their 4-week supply of $1 savings go to, and John wanted to respond to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, as we talked about earlier with where the people who voted for Trump, that coalition, sit on the political spectrum, Trump may or may not have touched on this issue either side very much, but they still fundamentally sit at the center economically and authoritatively socially. And so if you look at where those people poll on issues pertaining to, LGBT issues, they're all basically socially conservative. And so maybe Trump didn't come out and support those or be as against those as he should have been to really wheel those people in. But basically it's ambivalent as far as that's concerned. And so what we do know is that Trump taking time to address those issues, thinking he's going to win those people over, hasn't actually worked. I mean, even his support in 2016 or 2020 with LGBT people was not statistically significant, nor was there a statistically significant improvement. And so when any political operation is happening, you have a certain volume of discussion and resources that you can expend on different things. And so if you're going to waste those resources, which it is a waste on people who aren't going to vote for you anyway, because they've basically been brainwashed into hating you because we don't control the narratives and we don't control the institutions, the place that you want to be pouring those resources into would be on the issues that you won the election based on in the first place, which would be immigration, which would be free trade, and which would be foreign policy. It has very little to do with appealing to different interest groups and hoping that they come over, whether that's black people or gay people or transgender people. These are all things that Jared Kushner lobbied for because he thought that they would be effective in creating the sort of big tent movement, which obviously didn't help him.
There we go again. There it is again. Blame the Jews. It's the Jews doing it. They're the ones at fault here. We have to blame them. They're pushing the global homo movement, but don't tell anybody. They'll think we're anti-Semites.
Too much throughout the administration, but that also wasn't why he was elected in the first place anyways. Because if you look, even demographically, the people who are most likely to vote for Trump are also most likely to be socially conservative. So it's very clear that if we want to keep Trumpism going, if we want to keep the Trump train going, then the way to do that isn't by appealing to these issues, it's by appealing to the issues that got him into power in the first place. And then when we take the country back, then we can have these other debates once we actually wield power. But right now we're just getting totally crushed, so we don't have time to waste resources on anything that hasn't been proven to be effective.
Carlin?
Blaire has her hand up. Blaire has talked less.
I was just going to say, I actually completely agree with John that pandering to minority groups definitely didn't do Trump any favors. I think that the media completely controls the narratives. It doesn't matter. He could save, I don't know, a little person of color who's also trans out of a burning building, and the media would not care. But that's all the more reason to, I don't think you have to pander. I think you just don't have to try to exclude people. I think that just loses votes. And so, again, it just goes back to, you guys can't wield any of this power you say you want to wield if you're not going to win elections.
Conservatives, they don't want, it's not about pandering to them. The exclusion is the point. It's an ideological purist movement. They don't want anybody on their side who they feel would corrupt their movement. And people like Blaire will never be accepted into the very demographic she so desperately tries to be a part of, because she corrupts their movement in their eyes. And again, it's because she's a grifter. I'm sorry, but she is. And I do feel sorry for her on this panel. I understand that she's suffering the results of the rhetoric that she puts out there in trying to push people to the right, because you can push people to the right as a transgendered individual, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to adopt anti-LGBTQ ideas. I mean, John Doyle himself said it. Being conservative means being anti-LGBTQ. And the vast majority of conservatives, especially Trumpist conservatives, would say exactly the same thing. It doesn't matter how hard Blaire panders to this demographic. They're never going to accept her as one of them, because she is something that is in their eyes, that is fundamentally dissimilar to what their movement stands for. And I think that she does realize it, but she doesn't care because it's a grift.
You're just not. And I don't know. I just think it's just kind of silly to go on about this argument that certain people need to be excluded, because all it's doing is telling people not to vote for you.
I
And
actually agree with Blaire. I think.
if it keeps going back to like, we need to win, saying you can't vote for us or you don't have a place in the party I don't see the winning tactic of that. I mean, I don't think that the social conservative movement is going to necessarily grow stronger to the point where you wouldn't need. And also what you said about LGBT votes not having a statistical raise, I believe they did double. Obviously, it's still a small community, but it did double from 2016. So clearly there is a shift happening. I think it was 14% in 2016 and probably like 1% every other election before that. And it was like 28% in 2020. So yeah, minority groups don't necessarily win elections now. Over time, they very well could.
Can I just let me move to Lauren?
900,000 votes. Yeah. 900,000 people nationally came out from the LGBTQ community and voted for President Trump. We've done the math. It was absolutely not beneficial for all the money we spent when we could have been going after the working class, the white working class, the Christian working class.
Did you guys catch that? Please tell me that you guys caught what she just said. She literally just went full mask off white nationalist. What she's saying here is, we don't need you. You're not welcome in our movement, and we don't want you. You're not important enough. It's white people. It's the white working class that make up our coalition. Those are the people we want. Like I said at the beginning, you have to pay especially Lauren, but John too, you have to pay very, very, very close attention to the language they're using, because it's very revealing. Like that right there, that wasn't a Freudian slip or anything. She literally just went mask off white nationalist. Just recognize that.
I do agree.
Religiously, we spent way too many resources. So the lie that we have to be a big tent in order to win, and we have to be inclusive. Like I said, there is a party for free market capitalism and transgenderism and liberalism. That's called the Libertarian Party. Why don't you join them? We do not need you. You are doing nothing but hurting us. You are hurting the Christian vote by creating a platform for yourself saying, this is Trumpism. This is Trumpism. We should have never glorified this in the first place. While we are losing everything on social issues, we lose every single time. We are influencing, public opinion matters, and we are influencing our own elected officials to not take a stand on issues such as transgenderism, LGBTQ education, drag queen story hour. They are saying nothing. We have created a cowardly elected class within our party, so it is not helping us. There is absolutely no electoral benefit. There's no social benefit, and if you, like I said, if you are a gunslinging, freedom-loving person, absolutely, we'd love to have you come vote for us. But should you be having a say in influencing the party? Should you have an opinion that like Jared Kushner was the one who did push the LGBTQ agenda, mass migration. And those were the things that, mass migration was something that Trump addressed in 2016. That's what got the white working class out to vote for him. So there are plenty of votes out there for us to get, but it doesn't come with compromising. We don't get those 15 million unregistered Christian voters to get them registered to vote and out to vote for us by glorifying the LGBT community.
Congress shall make no.
The funny thing is, as we saw in 2016 and especially in 2020, the conservative Christians she's talking about are going to always vote for a conservative party. Assuming that it remains, right now, that's the Republican Party. That could change in the future, who knows. It doesn't matter if LGBTQ people also vote for the party. It doesn't matter if any of the demographics they don't want to voting for that party vote for that party. Because Trump could have straightforwardly said, yeah, I'm okay with the LGBTQ community, trans rights, the whole bit. Changed nothing else about his messaging, but just said that, those same conservative Christians would have still voted for him. Because the reason that they voted for him is because he hates the same brown people they do.
No law respecting an establishment of religion. I don't know why Lauren's so against the First Amendment. I think the First Amendment's pretty great. I also think the Second Amendment's pretty great too, because it protects the first. And these are the things that we should actually be conserving, and we can't do that if we can't win elections. The fact of the matter is, Lauren, that every single problem you have with the LGBT movement right now, from giving hormones to kids, medical transition, whatever, this was all caused by the right losing the culture war 30 years ago when they tried to legislate their religion. That is why we're currently experiencing this today. The only way to come back and conserve whatever it is you want to conserve is by winning elections. And the fact of the matter is, it's not just people like Blaire who vote based on LGBT issues. I am straight as an arrow. I'm married to a dude. Between the two of us, I'm the one that's actually married with the family. And so I will say that I absolutely will not vote for a party that treats LGBT people like they are subhuman. I won't do it. Part of the reason that Trump won my vote is because he does not care. He promotes people. He doesn't promote sexualities.
Okay, so first of all, you're using issues again on me that you don't apply for yourself. So Dr. Carl here was the first one to celebrate me being banned from Twitter. She was so excited to see that my voice had been silenced. So freedom of speech for.
Wait, hold on. Please tell me that you guys caught that. She's bitching about her freedom of speech getting silenced. She's literally bitching about the fact that she got deplatformed off Twitter. But if you'll remember, at the beginning of this, when we started, she was saying that people like Blaire White shouldn't be able to have a platform. They shouldn't be getting platformed, but that it's wrong for her to be deplatformed. This is that hypocrisy. This is that conservative hypocrisy. I can't be the only one that caught this. I cannot be the only one that caught this. This is insane. But like I said, this goes to the ideological purity aspect. They don't want anybody in their party that doesn't think exactly the way that they do, and they don't want to platform anybody that thinks exactly the way that they do. Those people shouldn't be allowed to have a platform. But if you take away my platform, now all of a sudden we've got a problem.
For thee, but not for me. Absolutely. So, disregard that opinion.
Well, I celebrated that you were banned on Twitter because you repeatedly tweeted that my husband should be deported, Lauren. And
He's
now
an illegal
I'm
alien.
thrilled. No, he's
Your
not.
husband
He has a permanent green card. I am now thrilled that I don't have to hear you call for my husband to be deported on Twitter, who has had a permanent green card for the last 6 years.
He came into our country illegally. He broke our laws. He did not do it
married
correctly.
an American. How lucky is he?
Go back. He has to go back. I'm sorry,
no, he
Dr.
doesn't,
Carl.
honey. That's not how laws work. It's not how laws work.
I just want you guys to know, Lauren and every other conservative has nothing wrong. They don't have anything against people coming to this country before actually being a citizen. The only reason that they bitch and complain about the southern border, and specifically the southern border, you'll never hear them bitch about anything else, is because it's brown people coming over. This isn't about law and order. This is being against what's often been dubbed the browning of America, that we are getting much more multicultural and much more diverse, and there are non-white ethnic groups migrating into this country. That's what she's upset about. She's not upset about laws being broken. She's upset at who specifically broke them. Brown people.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I have a husband and you don't, Lauren. I'm sorry. I'm
I love
sorry.
women.
Aw.
Mic drop. Okay, that was pretty glorious. That was because it's funny because the the woman here, Lauren, who's sitting here talking about family and family values and everything, is not married and has no family. Carlin is married and has a family. I don't know. I found that funny. I could consider that a mic drop.
You're welcome.
Really, anyone want to respond? You guys can keep going. Keep going. Blaire's like,
Oh, you want me to keep going? Oh, well, I'm in early recovery. So, I've only been clean 3 years. Myself getting in toxic relationships is what kept, me relapsing. So, I'm just doing it with wisdom.
Yeah, I can't remember all of the finer details, but Lauren used to be like addicted to like cocaine or crack or heroin, or it was some drug. It was a hard drug. I'm not going to make statements about which drug. It was some sort of hard drug. She also apparently, and this is her own saying, that she was like a drug mule for them, but it was like all the way up in like Massachusetts or Connecticut or something, like somewhere up in the northeastern part of the United States. In my own mind, that causes me to raise an eyebrow because I feel almost like, not that I'm saying that this is the case, and not that I'm saying that I'm attempting to delegitimize any negative experiences that Lauren went through, because while I think that she is a terrible person, she is still a human being. But I almost feel like that could be somewhat of a lie to like, I don't know if you guys have ever noticed that some people will lie about having experienced the other side just so that when they get into discussions, they can talk about how, well, I've known it from both sides. I understand this very well. I can speak for the other side, even though they haven't actually been on the other side. They just want people to think they have so that they can run this narrative that they can speak for the other side since I've been there. Like I said, I'm not saying that's the case, but I don't necessarily feel I need to afford Lauren here very much charity at all.
Wisdom this time. I'm dating. But my intention is to get married and have children eventually. But I certainly will not be marrying an illegal alien to give him his green card. So, I hopefully
So
will
now
find an
you're
American
just
man.
spitting
I
across.
will.
I love that.
I
I love
will
that.
find an American man.
Lauren, you'll be pleased to know we had several interviews with ICE and they blessed our marriage.
Really, even though he was illegal and didn't come the right way.
As a
It's
permanent green
crazy.
card.
Wait, what's the right way? Yeah, if you've ever been in a discussion with some of these conservatives and say, well, you need to come here the right way, just ask them, what is the right way? And they'll say, well, you got to come here legally. And then just say, well, what's that process? Can you tell me about it? These people don't know the first fucking thing about any of this. And notice how she said he's illegal. For as much as they bitch about people speaking English before they come here, they apparently don't know how to speak it very well themselves. Maybe, I guess I don't either with all my gaffes. Anyway, what was I getting at? Oh, yeah. The word illegal is an adjective. It's a descriptive word. It isn't a noun. Stop using it like it's a fucking noun, you troglodyte. It's not. The noun version would be criminal, not illegal. So this begs the question, okay, why then do they consistently refer to these people as illegals? Because they don't want you to view these people as being human. It is utilizing a particular style of language that dehumanizes a group or a demographic of people. If we call these people illegal aliens or illegals or what have you, this puts in your mind somebody who's not entirely human, that or at any rate that they're not worth being recognized as a human. And that is, it's absolutely disgusting. But that's why, like I said, you have to pay attention to the language that these two obvious white nationalist fascists are using, because they utilize a particular language, and a lot of it is dog whistling.
Hard, honey. I'm gonna get
Wow,
there.
we're gonna have to reinvestigate ICE.
Let's go to
But
Blaire.
you know what? Here's the thing though. Like we can keep talking about my husband all she wants to talk about him, but the fact of the matter is, my husband ain't gonna win us an election. Votes are going to win us elections. I don't know why we're so focused on these issues that are driving people away from voting for things like conserving the First Amendment, conserving the Second Amendment. That's really what I would like to have the
You don't
conversation
even
about.
like
No
the
one has
First Amendment.
conserved
You
either
don't
of
even
those
like it.
amendments.
So why are you
Wait, Lauren, neither do you. You literally said people like Blaire should not have a platform. You fucking hypocrite. Holy shit, this is insane. Is she dumb? She's legitimately dumb. She has to have like an IQ of like 61. Oh my god, I can't believe this. It's funny, but at the same time it's not. I mean, the implications of what she's saying are not funny, but the fact that she's contradicting herself in an extraordinarily hypocritical way is really, really, really funny.
Blaire wanted to chime in.
defending
Let's
it when you
cut.
don't even
Guys,
like
I'm gonna
it?
cut you guys off. I'm cutting
Make
you guys
that
off.
clear.
Blaire, I want to Blaire. Let me hear what you're gonna say.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think that there's a little bit of a tit for tat here, but I will say, Lauren, you said that Carlin was celebrating you being deplatformed. I did see that, and I personally disagree with Carlin for doing that. I don't like people being banned off Twitter, deplatformed. But I will say, you opened this up with saying that I shouldn't be given a platform and that I shouldn't have a say in the.
This right here, by the way, is the closest that Blaire gets to like defending herself in any sense at all. And by the way, agnostic pagan mom, the dumb blonde Nazi stupid troglodyte bitch that's Lauren Witzke. I mean, she's just straightforwardly a Christo fascist. She's a Christian nationalist, white nationalist fascist. That's what she is. John Doyle, I would say he is too. They're fascist. They're both fascist fuck. And fash meaning fascist, not fashion. John tries to have some fashion here, but I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's a nice shirt. I kind of do like that shirt. But anyway, let's continue.
The party so I think there's a little bit of it to go around. I think everyone should probably just respect each other a little bit more.
No, I didn't say you should be deplatformed from your voice. I was saying that you should not have a platform within a party who stands for traditional marriage because that is just.
This is what we call in philosophy and argumentation backpedaling. Because if you go back to what she said, she did not make that specification. She's only making it now to weasel her way out of her own hypocrisy. That's the only reason she's making this distinction now. Because if that's really what she meant, she would have specified that in the beginning. But that's not what she meant. What she originally meant, and what she still means, is she does not want people like Blaire to have a platform at all. Because she is diametrically opposed to what Blaire is. I should say who Blaire is, so that I don't sound like I'm dehumanizing her, because I think Blaire has really, really bad takes, and I think that she's a grifty, I think she's just a grifter, but other than that, I don't have any qualms with her at all.
Opposing itself. It makes no sense. Also, when you cannot deny that your people are the ones that are reading dressed in drag to kids at our taxpayers' expense. And I'm just curious, to what extent am I going to be forced to participate in your fetish or delusion while our children are being targeted for pedophilia openly? So, no, I don't want to give a platform to that lifestyle. And those are your people.
Here's the thing. There is.
Go ahead, Blaire. Sorry.
Okay. There is, and I think this maybe is something that you might not be aware of, or people who are not, closer to the LGBT community, knowing the inner workings, that there's actually a huge divide from people who.
It doesn't matter. It's a package deal. It all comes together.
I disagree. I think.
Yep, it's a package deal. If you're gay, you're a pedophile. If you're transgender, you're a pedophile. Like I said, this is the fear mongering. They only make this connection because they want you to fear the LGBTQ community. They want you to fear it. And when you fear it, you will begin to resent it. And thereby, you will begin to resent members of that demographic. And once you begin doing that, it will become significantly easier for you to completely to turn a blind eye to the fact that those people will be oppressed and actively targeted. That's what Lauren wants. I want you guys to know what Lauren is saying here is actually very dangerous language. Very dangerous language. John is pretty much believes the same thing, but he's been mainly quiet because Lauren has been he's pretty much saying everything that John would otherwise say. But don't take John's silence as somehow being indicative of a disagreement with what Lauren is saying. He, as he said in the beginning, he mirrors the things that Lauren stands for. It's just that she's been the one stepping up and saying it. But I want you to know that what she is saying and the ideology that she holds to is extremely dangerous. But it's also worth mentioning, people like Lauren, I hope that they're the future of the Republican Party. Because if they are, all that will do is drive people away from it. And that's essentially the point that both Carolyn and Blaire are making here, is that if people like Lauren and John are the future of the Republican Party and are the face of the conservative movement in this country, that will just push people away. Because our world, whether you want to accept it or not, is getting more globalized, more collective, more diverse, and more multicultural. And Lauren and John have both made it expressly clear those ideals are not to be found and should not be a part of conservatism. So I want people like Lauren and John to be the future of the Republican Party, because all that will do is push more people away from it.
I think that there's a huge divide within the community as from people who do support things like Drag Queen Story Hour, one of the things I've been very vocal against children transitioning. So I don't think it's a monolith. I don't think any group is a monolith. The same way that the right wing is not a monolith of just people who believe, in a biblical, definition of conservatism and people who don't. And I think that there's a really big missed opportunity for the right in the sense that I think LGBT people are actually the best warriors against gender ideology. And seeing children being read to by half naked drag queens and children going under hormone therapy at 12. I think that people that are from that community coming and speaking out against it do a lot better of a job at trying to stop it than people who are on the outside. Because at the end of the day, Lauren, you could make it part of your platform to be against those things. And even Carlin, you guys could talk about it, but it's simply the way it works. It's never going to be heard as loud as someone like myself or a gay person coming out of the community. And so I think that when you have, I would venture to say, the majority of LGBT people who disagree with those things, when they feel like they can't speak out against it, because what happens is the right will say, okay, you can speak out against it, but you still get no voice in the party. You're still disgusting. You're still a freak. They don't want to, then they end up staying on the left. And it makes it appear as though all of us agree with those things. But in reality, oftentimes we feel politically homeless, like we don't have a voice over here. And we have to pretend to be leftists or pretend to be along with these things because we don't have a political home.
Well,
so again, I think,
well,
so I just want to, one second, just one last thing. So again, I think just in general, the overall point of what I think is that you don't benefit from turning people off from voting for you. You just don't.
Okay. Well, listen, here's the deal. Your whole lifestyle really opens the door to everything that you claim to stand against. Now, I'm not really sure if you really stand against the transitioning of children or drag queen story hour, or if it's just public opinion is against you. Or if public opinion is against you because public opinion matters. I don't really know what's really in your heart. But when you walk out a lifestyle that introduces that to children, I mean, it's there. It is your people. It is part of, that's part of the package deal. It is spearheaded by the LGBTQ movement. Just because you take a normal stance on something, everybody should be opposed to grown men going into young girls' locker rooms or bathrooms.
And this is a talking point that I'm sure we've all heard from right-wing nut jobs like Lauren and John, even though he's been quiet. But Lauren, is that, oh, well, the transgenders are just going to go into girls' bathrooms, girls' locker rooms. Number one, the first thing, and you know what? Because this is really important, I'm going to make myself large here. The first thing that we need to mention is the amount of cases of sexual assault against women, whether they're young or not, occurring in a locker room, occurring in a bathroom, is virtually zero. It's not something you hear about because the people who would try to do that are going to recognize that such a public, an open and public place is obviously not going to be, it's going to play to the detriment of their goal. So that whole narrative falls apart the minute you recognize that. What pedophile is going to walk into a public bathroom where anybody could walk in at any minute and see what they're doing? Why would they do that? Because they're going to end up getting caught. The second thing is that, look at Blaire. Now we can go back to, look at her. I'm sorry, but I'm going to be honest here. I don't think anybody could legitimately look at Blaire White and say, oh yeah, she used to be a man. Look at her. I'm going to be honest. I don't really think that she's unattractive. I think that she's kind of pretty. At least here she is. People can say what they want about that, but I'm comfortable enough in my sexuality, so I don't give a shit what you say. Not to mention, I mean, she's a woman, so say what you will. But you want somebody like that going into the men's room, where they likely are more, where the chances of somebody being sexually harassed goes up? I mean, think about it. Somebody like Blaire going into the men's room, you don't think that increases the chances of people getting harassed? Whether you agree with what gender they identify or not, harassment is harassment. So again, this is not about preventing harassment or anything like that. This is all about targeting and oppressing demographics we disagree with. So that talking point that Lauren's utilizing here straightforwardly does not work.
That doesn't make you special. It makes you normal, you know, and just because you dress up as a woman does not mean that you have a special opinion on something that everybody should oppose.
Okay,
I'm not claiming to be special. I'm just a person that shares my opinions online. And what I'm just trying to tell you is that it's a lot more people than you think within the community, the LGBT community, that agree with me and think the exact same way. Not the exact same way, but on the more radical ideas like children, everything to do with children.
It's all the same.
I mean, you can sit here and you can insist that it's a monolith and insist that we all think that way and that it is a package deal, but it's really not, especially considering gender ideology and how it has manifested now and taken over culture and been popularized. It started it started well after the existence and acknowledgement of gay people or transgender people. Transgenderism used to be a purely medical issue that was treated on a purely medical basis. Gender ideology that we see on college campuses and that.
Wait, what? It used to be purely a medical issue? I'm sorry, Blaire, but no, that's straightforwardly false. Transgender people have existed for thousands of years, and for a majority of human history, they've been accepted. In the ancient Hindu cultures, they had a word for people who did not identify as either male or female. I can't think of it right off the top of my head, but give me a second here. I do know it existed. I cannot, of course it's not going to. It's not going to give me the word. But somebody might know it that's in the live chat. The Hindus had a word for people who didn't identify as male or female. The Greeks and the Romans had a very, very sexually open society. Some would argue that it might have been detrimental. I don't really think that it was, given that especially the Roman society is one of the most successful societies that's ever existed on the face of the planet. But transgender people have existed for thousands of years. And in most cultures, they've been accepted for who they are. Because most cultures have recognized that gender is a social construct. Gender is something normative. Gender is some standard that we define and that we can utilize as means of expressing the various ways in which we choose to identify. Now, that doesn't mean that biological sex isn't correlated with gender, but it doesn't stand in causal relations with gender. And that's a very, very important point. So again, what we're seeing here, ultimately, while it might seem that what Blaire is saying is, oh yeah, you know, it used to be a medical issue, not this big social issue, it might seem that what she's saying is agreeable, but just note that what she is saying is, again, the delegitimization of her own identity.
Oftentimes it's communists spreading it. That came much, much later. So if I think that they are two separate things.
Okay, so let me. I have to move the conversation on because I know that Blaire again has a hard out, and so I kind of want to give Carlin and John a chance to respond to this. So as we're wrapping this up with the big tent, with the idea of the place with gays, I don't want to get your opinion wrong, Lauren. So I'm just, if you can give me a brief response to this, do you believe that we should exclude the LGBT influence from the right wing and reestablish sort of like a Christian party? Can you give me your summary in under a minute?
Yeah, so certainly. In conclusion, the LGBTQ community has no platform, should have no influence on the party that was based on traditional marriage. Opposing gay marriage still is our platform. That hasn't changed, but we are going to have to vote on it again soon. You know, are we going to be the party moving forward? Are we going to be the party that compromises on our values that got us this far? Or are we going to stand firm on issues like family, restoring the nuclear family, getting dads back into the home, uh, re-legalizing conversion therapy, which they have stripped parental rights, where children now can't even go to get therapy if they choose to change their mind.
Yes, Lauren Witzke wants actual electrocution to happen to people, even if they want it willingly. It's like saying that, yeah, we should legalize gas chambers if somebody wants to gas themselves to death. That that's akin to the argument that she just made. This is why I say I hope that this becomes, that people like Lauren and the ideology that she expresses, and John as well, I hope it becomes the face of the Republican Party, because all that will do is push people away from it, as we're already seeing, as we've been seeing since the time of George W. Bush, quite frankly, if not prior to that. So for me, it does the left, it does progressivism good to have people like Lauren and John coming out and saying these things about the Republican Party and about what the Republican Party is supposed to stand for. But I just wanted to, she literally just said that things like shock therapy should be re-legalized, that essentially torturing people should be legal just because they're gay.
While struggling with gender dysphoria. You know, the only path forward with this LGBTQ agenda is stripping parents of their rights. Parents are being villainized for not wanting to transition their children. They're getting they're having their children taken away from them. You know, so it is not a lifestyle that should be included in the Republican Party, and it's not something we need either. Electorally, it hurts us.
Okay, Lauren, and then Carlin, let me give you, so if, in under a minute, can you wrap up your conclusion on this as well?
Yeah, this is about attracting as many people to the movement as we possibly can. I would like everyone who believes in freedom of speech, who believes in protecting the Second Amendment, who believes in protecting all our individual liberties to come to the movement. And I think it's rather ironic that people like Lauren talk about treasuring the traditional family when she was campaigning on Twitter to have my husband of almost 10 years deported. So protect the
Yeah.
traditional family, but break up mine. I would like to welcome everyone into this movement, including my husband, who will be starting the process of becoming a U.S. citizen a little later on this year. And when he does, he will be voting in the MAGA movement, just like me.
John?
I think that Lauren summarizes it pretty well. We're not saying that we're going to turn these people away. We're just saying that their issues can't be represented.
No, but that's actually literally what Lauren has been saying. These people have no place here. Turn them away. Which, for somebody who claims to be love Jesus and be a God-fearing woman, Jesus expressly said, "Don't turn people away." This is my guy. Have you been listening to this troglodyte at all? Seriously? That's exactly what she's saying.
In our party platform, because their issues fundamentally represent something that is deviant from the traditional American society. And these allusions to the Constitution as though it's an argument about religion, I think, is kind of disingenuous, because, like I said earlier, Lauren, I think, I mean, speaking for myself, I was against these sort of issues before I really came into the faith. But I think it's important to put that into context, that, like, when the Constitution was written, you mentioned the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, even the founding fathers like Thomas Jefferson, who would now be considered to be like the most radically pro-freedom of the founding fathers. When he was governor of Virginia, he wanted the punishment for sodomy to be the equivalent to the punishment for rape, because these were always considered to be deviant acts that were against, and when
That's a result of social norms. If you went back, 1,500 years, you could be executed for writing with your left hand, bro. Do you understand how fucking stupid what you're... Holy shit, I cannot believe that some people are actually this dumb, that they actually think these arguments matter. Yeah, because society was much more primitive and had entirely different social norms back then. That means that what they said was good and we should adopt that today. So people like me wouldn't be alive. Well, number one, because I have autism and I'm different than other people. But number two, I'm left-handed. That was good. I mean, there's a reason why it was called sinistrality, because it was considered to be evil. People with leprosy would still be considered to be possessed by demons and could be executed. People with mental or physical disabilities could be executed under, if you go with the logic that John here is using, because they're different, and that was seen as being wrong way back then. So that's how we should view it today. I mean, this is just, it's almost like presentism. In like reverse presentism. Well, they did this back then, which means it must have been good, so we should do it now. This is an idiotic argument, but I wouldn't expect anything else from fucking John Doyle.
against the social fabric of the nation and the moral fabric of the nation. So if you want to come vote for Republicans nominally, that's great, but you can't have your issues represented, because all of your issues, whether that be two men getting married, or it's just like, it all represents something that is the total enshrinement of equality, which is fundamentally a left-wing idea, and it always has been.
And then Blaire, give us your conclusion.
I guess my conclusion would be that this is all kind of silly. You have half the country unconstitutionally locked down, people dying alone right now, can't go to funerals, people out of work, like the entirety of the country living with almost no dignity. Out of all of a sudden, we have lockdowns and just so much stuff to worry about. We're bombing Syria, I just can't, I can't.
Oh, Brainbug makes a really good point in the chat. Yeah. Let's ask all these founding fathers that were so pro freedom that they didn't want to end slavery, that they owned their own slaves. That's how pro freedom and pro liberty they were. That they literally subjugated an entire demographic of people. That's how pro freedom they were.
Wrap my head around this being even remotely close to the most important conversation happening on the right or anywhere. And I think that it's also kind of just over. I guess I'm just kind of saying what I've already said before, but Trumpism is the future, and Trumpism isn't, unfortunately, what you've seen with Lauren and with John today. And they're certainly free to advocate for an increase or a rise in social conservatism. But speaking for a really big chunk of my generation, which are going to be the people running things very soon, and they already are, what Carlin said earlier about we grew up in a time where we were very, very turned off from social conservatism, and a lot of the more radical ideas that you're seeing now in regards to gender ideology, wokeness, it is the pendulum effect of social conservatism. It is. It was, I grew up in a time where when I was 5 years old, I was naturally feminine, getting beat up by little Christian kids in my school. And that was kind of the era that we were in, and things changed and people got disgusted with that. And the pendulum is now to the point where now you have people being disgusted with the opposite end. So I guess big tent party is the future. Not a huge tent. You don't have to compromise on everything, but
Right.
you do have to acknowledge the anomalies in people and that everyone's different. And if you're going to be searching for, you know, pure, perfect, ideologically consistent 100% of the time people to only be part of your movement, you're not really going to find many of them.
Okay.
Especially because a lot of these social conservatives on Twitter that love to talk about LGBT people being excluded, a lot of them are secretly gay behind the scenes.
All right,
So.
Blaire, I gotta cut you off there. That's a loaded statement. I know, John, people want to respond to that stuff. Maybe you are secretly gay behind the scenes. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're super straight. It doesn't really matter. Guys, I want to hear your thoughts below in the comments. We could kind of go on with this conversation forever. And I want to let you know something. Obviously, Carlin and
All right. That's pretty much the end of the video. So just some final thoughts, and hopefully I don't get too repetitive here. But the first thing I want to say is, when you find that Karolyn Borisenko, who I don't think is the most unreasonable person I've ever heard, but when she's the single most reasonable individual on a panel, I think that speaks volumes, as I said earlier, to the reasonability of the other members of that panel. And I think that some points that Blaire made, while I might disagree with them, are at least more reasonable than the two fascists sitting on the panel. But I wasn't actually planning to review this whole video, but we had some stream problems for about 10 minutes there. I'm glad that some of you stuck with me through that. But we got it all figured out. Shit happens, life's a bitch, and then you die. Anyway, the main point of me doing this was to talk about Blaire White and why she couldn't come up and defend herself when her ideology, who she is as a person, is being explicitly delegitimized. And she didn't have the courage to stand up and say, look, I'm not going to let you treat me like this. You are the reason. All she had to say was, Lauren, you are the reason. What you're saying and the ideals that you adhere to is the reason that people are being pushed away from the Republican Party and being pushed away from conservatism. But she didn't. And again, that goes to the fact that Blaire White is a grifter. She's not center-right, she's center-left. She's not welcome in the conservative movement. It's certainly not the Trumpist conservative movement. She isn't wanted by any of them. She's not appreciated by any of them. And I would argue a majority of her viewers probably are not really that conservative at all. It's just, like I said, it's a grift. It's doing something because you can get attention or other potential benefits, like monetary benefits, out of it. There's no way that I personally could have sat there and let myself be delegitimized and vilified the way that Blaire let herself get delegitimized and vilified. And while I know that Blaire White is never going to watch this video, if you ever do, I would be very much interested in having a discussion with you on why you consistently pander to a demographic, a political demographic, that doesn't want you to be a part of them. Because that's what you did in this entire debate, panel, stream, whatever the fuck you want to call it. All you did, Blaire, on this panel was essentially say, well, I mean, Lauren, you're kind of right, but I'm talking about it too, so let me in the movement. You were just pandering to the very movement that's actively trying to reject you. You are suffering the result of the rhetoric that you push. You are laying in your bed the way that you made it. And I really don't know how to define it. It's certainly disheartening. I can only imagine what somebody with a voice or a platform like Blaire White could do if she actually talked about, you know what, If this is how you feel, you need to accept who you are and you need to express yourself the way that you feel you should. Because if she did that, I honestly think, with her platform, yeah, she's got what, like almost 1 million, I think, followers on YouTube, something like that. I know she's got several 100,000 at least. She might lose a couple 10,000 if she switched her narrative. But if she switched her narrative, she would gain many, many, many more than that, and would become a voice for an entire generation of people, an entire demographic of people who oftentimes don't feel like they're entirely accepted by our society. But she doesn't do that. Instead, she tries to pander to a political demographic that doesn't accept her because she's engaged in a grift. She doesn't care about her own identity, at least not enough to recognize who she is, strongly enough that she's willing to defend it and advocate for people being who they are. That is a problem to me. That is, at best, disingenuous and at worst, dishonest. And I see it as a major problem. She's not doing anything to help the conservative movement, and she's not doing anything to help people who are transgender. She's kind of just this person that's sitting on the sidelines yelling at both sides, and neither side will accept her because of who she is, yet who she's chosen to side with. And that's always going to be a problem for her unless her messaging changes. But I really do hope that the way that Lauren spoke to her made her realize something, and that is this, that the conservative movement is never going to open themselves up to accepting people like Blaire, for the reasons that both Lauren and John laid out. Not that I agree with them, because I obviously don't, but because what Blaire is antithetical to how they view conservatism. And for that reason, they will never accept her. And that's the final meme. So you guys go on and get out of here. Go have fun. Go eat dinner. Go play with your kids. Do something. I don't want to see you anymore. Just go away. Go on.